All right, so have you heard about this hairdresser that's like, it's like she's trying to send this message about consent. And so she's making these videos where she's filming her and the clients, and she opens everyone with like, is it okay for me to touch you? Have you seen this?
No, I haven't.
Oh my, okay, so you got to watch this.
Okay, is it okay if I touch you?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And what are your pronouns?
They, them.
She, they. I'm glad we exchanged those.
Yes.
Okay. I'm glad that you came in today. So, okay if I touch you.
Go right ahead.
And what are your pronouns?
He, him.
She, her. Thank you for asking earlier. Okay,
So the premise is she asks people if she can touch them.
Right.
And their pronouns.
Right. And then you saw she starts giving the whole like, I'm so glad that you gave me the opportunity to have this conversation, to perform this. Like, it's this ridiculous, it's a performance is really what it is. And like, I get what she's going for with like the consent is an important thing or whatever. But first of all, at the barber, this is the stupidest damn thing ever, because I'm there for a haircut. I scheduled with you for a haircut. I came in to get my haircut. Then like everybody's saying the same thing. They're like, what would you do if she said, like somebody said no, what would you do? How you gonna cut a hair without asking? So like, I get that she's trying to do the whole consent is important, but you picked a setting that is so stupid. That'd be like if we were at a restaurant and the waiter was trying to make a point and they were like, is it okay if I serve you food? Yes, that's what I'm freaking here for. That's a dumbass question to ask me. And then the other thing that bothers me about this is that she is like, they do the pronoun exchange, which I also find really stupid, because if I ask you your pronouns and we're having a conversation, when am I ever going to use those?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's never going to come up while we're talking. You use pronouns when you're talking about other people. So again,
maybe like around the salon, like if she's referencing the client to other stylists, or it's very common practice that there would be someone shampooing and another person cutting and all of that. So maybe that's the scenario where she's trying to make people feel comfortable. I think I obviously I agree with you that in this situation, these people are coming to get their haircut. So it's an understood exchange that this person is going to be touching your hair. What I think is, though, that the market is going to deal with this as according to what it is. You know what I mean? I think that people who require this sort of coddling, people who want this safe space, people who want to support this kind of language and dialogue and all of that, I think that you know, they're going to come to her. And I think she's very quickly going to find that they're few and far between.
Yeah.
So capitalism will fix it.
Capitalism for the win.
That's what I think. Yeah.
I mean, I think you're right. Like I think she'll have a small but loyal customer base.
Absolutely.
People that want to feel good about themselves because they go to the Consent Barber or whatever. But I think you're absolutely right. She's gonna have like 24 clients that really care about this crap.
Right.
And then, anytime I see people doing this kind of stuff on camera, my dandruff gets up instantly, because I'm just like, you stage this shit that the customer sees the phone, you've got the camera, they have this little performance that they're doing, and then I'm just like, I know what you're going for. You look so silly when you stage it like that.
But that's what it is. She's marketing her business to this type of customer.
Yeah.
This is her form of marketing. She's online. She's making sure everyone sees that this is how she runs her business, because there isn't that big of a clientele for this type of performance. There aren't that many people who are going to be even comfortable with that sort of exchange at a hair salon. I don't want people to talk to me any more than is necessary. Just, this is what I want with my hair. Half the time I'm just showing them a picture. There's no description necessary here. This is what I want. Figure it out, and that's what I'm paying you for, is to make it look like this photo that I'm showing you. And you don't need to know really anything else about my life at all whatsoever. Yeah. So she's marketing to a very particular client, and that's what that is. It's like a commercial that she's doing. It's performance. That's you hit the nail on the head with that it is a performance, and she's trying to market to this particular type of person because there clearly aren't enough of them.
Right.
So.
It just looks hilarious. You bring up a good point. I never know how much is appropriate to say to my barber, because the guys I go to, it's 3 guys, and they work like 13 hours a day. Like they're hustling, right? They're getting after it. And I'm always confused, because on the one hand, I feel like I bet they have to answer the exact same questions all day long. Yeah, the guys are Muslim too, right? So I'm sure they get a ton of questions. We're in the Midwest. A lot of people are like, I don't know anything about Islam, and that's it's a
I don't even
topic
know
of
so much
conversation,
Islam as much
you
as
know,
like their country of origin.
Yeah.
Oh, where are you from? And, you know, varying things about their customs and culture and that kind of thing. But
so I know people are making that same kind of, I'm sure, like, on the one hand, I bet they're like, that's great. We get to educate these Americans about stuff they don't know about, make Islam seem less scary, whatever, like we're ambassadors for Islam or something, and the Middle East. But then also at the same time, I'm like, I bet you guys have this conversation all day, every day. Yeah. And so I don't ever know if it's polite to ask the questions and like show interest in that, or if it's more polite to just shut up and give that guy a freaking break for a half hour while he cuts my hair and not have to make the exact same small talk that he's made all day, all week, all month.
Absolutely.
So I don't know. I never know what the right answer is there.
I'm sure it depends on the stylist. Some people are chattier than others, but to me, I don't know. I'm not a small talker to begin with, and so it's just not what I'm there for. I want you to cut my hair. I'll be polite and I'm happy to answer questions and, you know, whatever. But yeah, I'm not there to have a whole discourse about transgender, you know, about your pronouns and your, I don't care. Yeah. What shampoo should I use? I don't know.
Yeah, you're right though. I mean, these are the type of people that, and they're basically, they're all calling themselves allies. And it's, I think it's like a fun little, like, you're an ally, you're a virtue signal, I am too, this is great.
It's like a fandom. It's like a fandom. Yeah. Like the nerd in me acknowledges the nerd in
Alphabet
you.
fans.
Yes. Yeah, it is. But like I said, I think that capitalism will sort that out very quickly, because she will find a clientele that is interested in that sort of treatment and that sort of language that's important to them, and those people will find her, and that will be great. But I just don't I don't know that there's enough clients for this to become like a widespread thing. And I think most business owners, most stylists who are their own business owners, they know that that's not that's not what's going to make them money. And it is their business.
I think she's a special case. I want to say that is it's in LA. It's in a big city, something like that. I think it's LA.
Well, that tracks.
Right. It makes sense to be out there. When's the next primary thing coming up?
So Nevada, and then, do you say Nevada or Nevada?
I think I say Nevada.
And then South Carolina. But the one they're talking about is
South Carolina. Well, so do you think, so Nevada's next, and I got in trouble for saying biopic also.
I think you just gotta commit, you know. Look, you're gonna say things different than other people.
I say Nevada, I say biopic, and I call small moving pictures GIFs. It's a hard G, and I'm gonna die on those hills. I'm just not changing. I've said biopic too long at this point to change it. So Nevada's the next one on February 8th. I gotta get this cut before then. And you think Haley is gonna hang on to see how South Carolina goes? Like how long do you think she's gonna stick it out? Because New Hampshire was the last one, right? And that went better for her than I thought it was going to go. I thought the spread was going to be much larger.
She spent too much money there. She spent almost $100 million in Iowa, and that was like early reporting. So it's very possible that she spent more than that. So she came to play in Iowa, and I think she knew what she was up against in New Hampshire. I think she knew those were more her people, and that would be easier. So she didn't invest quite as much. I think the next one that she's really investing in is South Carolina. That's her home state. Yeah. And she's not polling terribly well there. So, which I think speaks for itself.
Yeah, that's not, I mean, if you're the former governor and you can't poll well, that's terrible. Like, I know people put a lot of stock in Iowa because it's, you know, first in the nation, whatever. But we were talking about the other day that it's like it's like a specific crowd. Like,
it is.
Iowa and New Hampshire are such different states and demographics, and we were both sad to see Vivek drop out early right after Iowa, because you had said that's such a terrible strategy. His team really failed him on that one.
That was my biggest criticism of him in general, is that he should have gone into it knowing that all of his effort in Iowa was useless. He should have focused on New Hampshire to begin with, because Iowa, that's not his voter base. Yeah. Those aren't his people.
Right.
I think he was really hoping for a Trump-style upset there.
Yeah.
Because that's what Trump did in Iowa in particular, and everybody was like, what is happening? You know, these waspy white people are voting for this very clearly Democratic guy. And I think that Trump really surprised a lot of people in Iowa, and Vivek was hoping to do something similar and sweep up the people who were just tired of the Trump drama. But New Hampshire would have been a better play for him.
Yeah. Now, I thought basically once everybody else dropped out that, like, I kind of thought Haley was writing as, I saw her as like the best of the, because everybody's been second place, right? I mean, like, everybody at this point knows Trump's the nominee. I mean, I enjoy watching this stuff. I love talking about it with you, but I have no illusions that anybody but Trump is going to be the Republican nominee. So it was always just kind of an interesting, like, hey, who's going to be in second place, right? And I always kind of saw her as everybody's kind of like best of second. Like, nobody was really excited about DeSantis. People are very iffy on Vivek for some reason. And Haley's, you know, she's got experience. I think a lot of Republicans are like, hey, she's a woman of color. That's great. Looks good for us. We're not the party of old white guys, right? They were really excited about that. So I always figured that, though, once everybody fell off, that kind of the mask would fall off her as well. And the people that pretend to like her would be like, okay, well, now that the fun is over and she's not beating up on DeSantis or Vivek or you know, Tim Scott or whatever, that they would all just kind of go, okay, well, we had our fun. Now it's time to get behind Trump, and we're gonna trudge forward with that. But she did really. I mean, what was the final? It was like 55-45 in New Hampshire.
It was pretty close to New Hampshire. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts? Do you think that's going to give her a lot of momentum going forward? Like, do you think she's going to do really well in Nevada, or do you think as time goes on, the novelty of second place contender is going to wear off and people are going to kind of get into that, all right, well, it's Trump, we better just accept it and move forward?
Yeah, I don't know. What I think is interesting about these two candidates in particular is that they both play really well to a more moderate voter. So you're looking at Haley, they both appeal to Republican-leaning Democrats at this point. And so they're fighting for a similar voter base, in my opinion. I think we're going to see them really struggle to get it. Basically, at this point, it comes down to what's your opinion on war?
Right.
Are you okay if we're policing everywhere? Or would you prefer we bring everybody home and we focus on us for a minute and we date ourselves for a few years? Like, that I think is going to be the deciding factor between the two. What's really difficult at this point is that Trump has just widespread support that is just, it's so insane, the support that he has. I mean, it is just, it's crazy, loyal people, you know, but I think what Haley has is money.
Right.
And so that's
something Vivek tried to get her on, was pointing out just how much money and just how much military industrial complex money that she has. He really tried to play that up. Obviously, that
and hopefully Trump will take a page from that book, that playbook, as they move forward. But they've canceled all the debates leading up to these primaries. Neither Trump nor Haley will participate, and so they canceled them. And I think Haley's in it for the long run. I don't think she's going to drop out if she does poorly in South Carolina, like a lot of people are speculating. I don't think she's dropping out. I think she's got the money to keep going, and so she's going to keep going, and she's banking on the fact that he's going to end up in prison. Yeah.
See, I think that I think anybody that wants to see him in prison, they waited too long. Because at this point, now 6 months away from the election, if all of a sudden a bunch of stuff comes in and they go, oh, we're convicting him and all that, you don't think that his base is going to... I mean, I'm not even a supporter of his. I voted Libertarian the last 2-3 elections. I don't like his domestic policies, but even I would look at that like, really? Really, right before the election, that's when suddenly you had 4 years to figure all this out, but now suddenly in the middle of the race when he's leading... Now all of a sudden the charges are going to come up. That looks fishy. I don't care who you are. I would hope that even Democrats who are intellectually honest would look at that and go, that feels off. That feels very, very off. And I think that you're right that he's going to, or he should, point out her kind of pro-war stance. Because when people talk about Trump, they, like his supporters, and you say, why do you like him? They will almost always bring up the fact that, like, he canceled 3 wars during his term. We didn't have any issues abroad. We had no issues with Iran. We had no issues with Russia. We had no issues with China. and it was only a 4-year period, but people point out, like, there were no foreign conflicts. As a matter of fact, we had fewer foreign conflicts under Trump. And I got to agree with him on that. I do like that. I don't agree with Haley thinking that we need to have bases all over the world. We need to police the entire world. We're already spending 25% of our budget on our military. And while I wasn't crazy about Trump's spending domestically, you just cannot deny his foreign policy record. And I think that if he doesn't hammer on that in his stump speeches and whatnot, I think he's missing a huge opportunity.
I think so too. I also think that one of his best plays, and I'm certain he's got it in his back pocket, is that he's going to villainize her as the very type of established government that's coming for him. Because that's what his base wants. They want people to hang for how they're treating him. He has exposed in the eyes of his base this deep state idea that, everyone is out to get him and he's their actual voice, and that's why they want him to go down. And it's assassination by public opinion. And I think that probably his best play at this point is to establish the fact that she is establishment.
Yeah.
She is the very type of crook that's coming for him. She's part of their mob. And I think that his voter base would respond really, really well to that.
Yeah, I agree. Now, tinfoil hat moment for a second. I think the establishment would love to see a Trump presidency because though he is popular, my opinion is he's absolutely destroying the Republican Party. Yeah. The Republican Party at this point, they are not Republican voters. They are Trump voters. There is a cult of personality around him, and he only has 1 term left. So if I were, Mr. Deep State, I'm looking forward, right? Illuminati, whatever you want to call it, I would love it if Trump were president for the next 4 years. Do Democrats think he's going to do damage and all this? Whatever. Yeah, I'm sure there's things that he's going to do they don't agree with. But then once he's gone, the Republican Party is dead. Yeah.
That's true.
And so I really hope that I hope the Republicans are kind of thinking about this. I'm sure some of them are, the never Trumpers and stuff. I think they're forward looking in that aspect of like, what do we do once this guy's gone? He's not loyal to the party in any way. As a matter of fact, that's what his supporters love so much about him, because he calls out, the Republican Party, the RNC, the establishment, all of these things. But I think what they're not thinking about is going forward, then basically it's going to be Democrats sweeping, and they're not going to be happy with that. A lot of Trump voters are not going to be happy when the Democrats are just sweeping everything, because people are hating Trump so much that they're voting against him. I mean, I honestly, I don't see any other election where Joe Biden wins unless he's going against somebody like Trump that people hate so much. They're like, well, we got to vote for Joe because he's not Trump. See, that's my tinfoil hat moment, is that I'm terrified that they're still running Biden. And we've talked about this, and I've said this to you before, and I understand that it sounds really crazy, but it really doesn't sit well with me that they're so comfortable running Biden. That the party has gotten on board and they're like, great, this is what we're doing. We are into February now of an election year, and Biden is still their candidate. And that to me is terrifying, because it means they think they can win with him. Right. It means they have it so in the pocket. They know exactly how they're going to do it, that it doesn't matter what patsy they stand up in front of us. They're going to win the election by whatever means necessary. Yeah. And so that is the scary thing to me. It's not if Trump wins. I mean, Haley does unsettle me for similar reasons, but it really worries me that they are confident and comfortable saying Biden's our guy, because it means they already know they've won. Right. They don't have to have a good candidate. In fact, I don't think they want a good candidate. I think they want a docile one. Yeah. And so there's my tinfoil hat for the day. It's just, it worries me, the direction that American politics is going, because for the last, 4 or 5 elections at this point now, we're getting into a real deep rut here where both sides suck. Yeah. And I know that is people are going to be, oh, Trump didn't suck. Yes, he did suck. He straight up lied to his constituents. And I know a lot of Trump voters don't want to hear that, but guys, as good as his foreign policy was, he fully lied to people. We're going to build the wall and Mexico's going to pay for it. No, they're not. They never were going to. I'm going to put Hillary in jail. No, you weren't. The president of the United States is not going to go after a single individual and make sure that they go to jail. That's ridiculous. You know, I'm going to drain the swamp. Never actually happened. Like, there were so many I'm not going to golf as much as Obama. Golf twice as much as Obama. Right. I'm not going to do as many executive orders as Obama. He ruled by executive order. Dude wrote twice as many as Obama. And Obama served 2 terms to his 1, and he still wrote more executive orders. So there were all kinds of straight up lies that he told his constituents. So he was not a good candidate. He is not a good candidate right now. Joe Biden is not a good candidate. Hillary Clinton was not a good candidate. For over 2 decades at this point, we've had shit candidate versus shit candidate, and both sides are like, well,
lesser of two evils.
I don't want the other shit candidate, so I got to vote for this guy. And we wonder why the actual turnout is so low and why the independent class is so large. It's because nobody actually likes any of these people. And yeah, we've been doing the lesser of two evils thing for a long, long time. And if you want my second tinfoil hat moment, I agree with you. I think that's on purpose. I think you're absolutely right. They love these docile candidates. Yeah. They love people who really suck, but the other guy sucks too, and it's just controlled opposition on both sides, and they just hand it back and forth. Meanwhile, the government continues to grow the entire time. We spend more and more every year. We just get deeper and deeper into debt, no matter who's in charge, and that worries me a lot.
Yeah, I totally agree. I really liked Vivek. I think that a big problem that Trump had is that he didn't run the government like he would run a corporation. You know, I think that as a CEO, your primary objective is vision casting and is good hiring and putting people in the place to execute your vision. And I think that he got too in the weeds of this is what we got to do and this is the policy we've got to run. And I'm not saying that well. I don't think he cast the vision. I think he tried to execute it himself.
Yes.
And that's not why we wanted a CEO in the executive branch of the government. You know, I think that that's, like I was saying, that's why I really liked Vivek. I think that he understands a CEO's job. It's not to do the work itself, but he understood the parameters on what exactly he could accomplish as the president himself legally, what falls in his, on his desk and what he's capable of achieving and what he needs to do to run everything else. And I think he was already vetting people to put, in his cabinet, and he was running as CEO. And that's what I would ultimately like to see is someone who runs the government, the executive branch as an executive, know?
Well, I really appreciated that he had that plan and he knew what was in executive powers and what was not. And he refused to say he was going to do stuff that was basically congressional jurisdiction. And I remember we were laughing at one of the primary debates when DeSantis, they asked him about like housing or something. And he just he was like, well, what we're going to do, I'm going to be president and we're going to lower the price of housing. And then people are going to have house. And he was just like, we're just going to do it. And it was like, what do you mean you're just going, I didn't realize that once you got elected, you could just lower housing costs. Like no plan, no idea how to enact that, no idea if Congress is going to support him. But Vivek, he's the first one I've seen in a long time that had a plan and said, look, I'm allowed to do these things legally according to the Constitution. This is what I will do. And I can't promise you anything else, but I can tell you I will do these things because I'm allowed to.
Right. But I feel like alongside that, he also casts a vision of this is, the attitude I want to bring back to government. This is the purpose that I see us pursuing. So he did all of the vision casting CEO things that I want to see, but he also understood what his actual job was. And I'm still mourning the loss of that candidate. I understand he's not the most personable guy. Like, I can see how people would dislike him just on a person-to-person level. He talks fast. He's got a lot going on. He's fairly abrasive in some of his attacks on other candidates. Like, I can understand all of that, but at the same time, I think when you really get down to the nitty-gritty, we don't want a one-term president.
Right.
We need someone other than Trump simply for that fact.
Yeah.
We need a two-termer. We need that opportunity to actually get anything done.
Yeah.
And I think that beyond that, I lost my train of thought. I think we need a two-termer, and I think we need someone who does ruffle a few feathers. Someone who is outside the Republican Party to a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think Vivek's you think he's gonna practice and come back? Because we were talking about with the primary debates was, and I was asking people in my videos, like, what, or my comments, like, what do you not like about Vivek? And some people said he's like a flip-flopper. They say that they think that he poll tests ideas and kind of goes with whatever's popular. They feel like he flip-flops stuff. One thing that I know for certain, having watched those primaries, was he didn't understand what his tone was supposed to be. Yeah. And I think we talked about this with DeSantis too. Like, the two of them did not know what, I hate to use the term character because it sounds like they're faking it, but there is kind of a persona that you need to really just focus on. Yeah. And Vivek didn't really seem to know because in the first primary, he was a little timid. It was his first one. He didn't really want to be super abrasive.
I wouldn't even say timid. I think he was trying to play the nice guy card. Like, yeah. We're not fighting each other. Yes. We're fighting someone else. Yeah. Well,
then the second primary came around, and he didn't do very good in the first one.
The second debate.
Yeah, the second debate. Mm-hmm. And he, I guess somebody on his team said, you got to be tougher. Well, then he came knives out and just was there to scrap. Mm-hmm. But he came off as petty in some of the stuff, especially when he's talking to Nikki Haley. Like, some of his remarks about her, whatever, a pig in high heels or something, or telling Chris Christie, like, just sit down, go have a meal, like making fat jokes about the guy. Like, there's being aggressive, and then there's just kind of being petty, and it's not a good look when you're just petty.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that's where he lost it right there, is that he started to get petty with the heels joke on DeSantis. Mm-hmm. And people thought he was coming for Haley on that one, but it was DeSantis. He was attacking DeSantis. It was a joke about DeSantis boots. I think that, that's where he lost it. I don't think he did flip-flop on policy. And, and I'm sure that people could comment and tell me all the ways that I'm wrong, but I've been following his campaign for a long time, and it's something that I pay pretty close attention to. I'm sure not as close attention as others, but, it's something I am interested in, and I followed a lot of what he was saying, and I didn't see a lot of flip-flopping. Mm-hmm. I didn't see a lot of poll testing his opinions. In fact, I think he voiced a lot of opinions that were largely unpopular, like his stance on Ukraine. I don't think that most people were in his pocket on that one. I think his ideas on cutting down the size of the federal government, that was largely, I don't want to say unpopular, but I think people were nervous. What is that going to look like? No. How is that even possible? So I think that gave people pause, at least with his campaign. People like the idea in general of, clearing out the swamp, but cutting out these large agencies. I think
just eliminating the FBI.
Right. I think people just saw layoffs, and unemployment going crazy. And that I think was a big drawback for his campaign, is that people just didn't want to see a bunch of people just arbitrarily without jobs because this guy came in and just hacked up what we've already got going. So I don't know. I think that didn't play well, but I don't think he changed his message. Mm-hmm. I think he changed his delivery. Yeah. And I think people didn't like the persona he took on.
So what do you think is his, like, if he comes back in 4 years, what do you think is his best persona? Like, what does he need to portray the most and stay focused on that is going to make him the most successful? Because for a while he was doing you liked the family thing. Because we have a big family, right? We have 6 kids. So like when he was like, make families cool again or whatever, he did that for like 2 weeks. That was his message, was make families cool again. We're like, yes. And then I guess it didn't work. I don't know. But he didn't bring that up anymore, and he really did. You're right. Like, his tone was just kind of, he was testing those tones to see which particular message resonated the best.
But again, I think that was persona, not policy. Yeah. But you're right. I guess he did push different things at different times, but I don't think I ever heard him actually flip-flop on his objectives.
So what do you think is his best? Like, do you think he needs to come out and be more of a fighter? Do you think he needs to do the whole policy wonk, nerdy biotech CEO, I'm just about the numbers? Is that the persona that he needs to pursue? Like, what do you think is going to make him successful next time?
So I think what really spoke to me, you're right, was the make families cool again. And it's not because we have a large family. It's because I believe that that's our best form of governance is at home. I think that's where it all begins. That's where it starts. And we've got to give families the freedom to govern their own families.
Yeah.
Obviously, horrible behaviors withstanding, but you know what I'm saying. Like, I think that government starts at home.
Yeah.
Community starts at home. And that's what we've got to restore in this country, is allowing people to govern their own homes. So I think he goes with that. And I think what's really strong about him is how clever he is. And that sounds really stupid and petty, but he is quick on his feet. He makes decisions relatively rapidly, but it never feels uninformed. Generally, it's what I appreciate about you, is that he takes in information quickly and he can process it relatively quickly and come to a good conclusion. And I think he's always open to outside information. He understands his position. I think what works for him is that he's clever. And I think that that's the role that he needs to play, is that I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I think he should have argued more about how Trump only has one term. That really bothers me. As a voter, I wouldn't vote for Trump simply because I know that we need someone else. We need someone who's got a solid 8 years, because you can't turn this barge in 4 years. No. You just can't. Not
without going full scorched earth. And I think that's something that really worries people about Trump, is they're like, he's angry, right? Because I think there are ways you could say he's been wronged. I mean, people have just come after him. And I think he's going to go a little scorched earth, and if he wins, and he's going to piss a lot of people off, erode trust in government even more than it already is eroded. And I think that, I hate to use the word like he's dangerous, but I think he's going to go, he's going to try to get stuff done in that 4 years, and it's going to have to be extreme. So you're absolutely right to get anything meaning, but all he can do is like executive order type stuff, which we saw with Joe Biden. Joe Biden came in and was like, oh, cool, I'll just repeal everything you did. So then, oh, great, what have you accomplished? You know what I mean?
That is the problem. And that's where I think Vivek really shined, is that he understood the job. He understood what was even possible legally, what he could actually get accomplished. And I think he should have made that more of his platform. Yeah.
Now with DeSantis, we've talked, he had the wrong character too. He did not know what he wants to be is tough. He wants to be a fighter. Yeah. He wants to be, what that guy used to call himself? Renegade? No, was it Renegade? Who was the McCain? What was his?
Maverick.
Maverick, that's what it was. Yeah. Yeah, DeSantis wants to be Mr. Maverick. He wants to be a fighter, cowboy, tough guy, new sheriff in town. He tried to make his whole campaign basically about fighting the wokesters and like how,
he bucked the system.
Right. Woke liberals are taking over America, and I'm here to stop them. The Marshals here to stop the wokeness. And I thought from the beginning, I made videos about it last year, that this is not going to work. Your fight against Disney is not going to translate to a countrywide election where people care. Florida, I think, cared. I think Floridians were with him on the Parents' Rights and Education bill, or what they were calling the Don't Say Gay bill. I think his fight against Disney and their tax exemptions and stuff, that was very popular with Floridians. It was very popular with culture warriors. But then he and his team clearly thought, cool, we can take this tough guy image fighting the woke left and we can take it to the national stage, and that does not translate. Because, like we said earlier, he didn't have any policy ideas. Well, what's weird is, like you said, you listen to interviews with him, and he's like a total nerd.
Yeah, he's very dorky.
He's a policy wonk.
Yeah.
And so then he got on stage after having these tough guy ads and, I'm going to take on the wokes and all this. Then they would ask him questions, and he's like the most boring, lukewarm human being imaginable. And he's not living up to the gunslinger persona that he wants to have.
Yeah, he wants to come across as a cowboy, but I think he thought his military service would translate. I think he thought, I'm a veteran and people are going to see me as this, Navy SEAL, badass kind of guy. And I think that's how, and then you find out he was an attorney.
Right.
And that's not to disparage his service. I mean, I'm sure he's, all our military servicemen have been through it. You know, like there's just no
There's a
arguing
certain
that.
image when people think of when people think of service, they're thinking of bearded macho dude in fatigues in the desert. Like that's what they picture, right?
Yeah.
And that's not what he was.
He's
so
a
it just
lawyer.
didn't match up.
Right. He's a lawyer. And I think that, he just chose the wrong persona. I think that he wanted to be a cowboy. He wanted everybody to see how he was going to be, how during COVID he bucked the system and he was the only one brave enough to take on Disney and take on all these woke policies in Florida. And he did do all of those things, but I think he'd have been better off to explain why.
Yeah.
Because he had data to back up what he was doing.
Yeah.
This is what my constituency wants.
Yeah.
And so this is what I'm going to give them. And I think he probably would be better off to just run on that and say, I'm your candidate.
Mm-hmm.
I fought for the people of Florida. I gave them what they wanted. And I'm willing to do that as the U.S. president as well.
Yeah. Yeah, if he tries to come back, and I think everybody thought he was the next heir apparent.
Yes.
I think he thought it. I think his team thought it. I think a lot of people in the RNC thought it. That very much like Mitt Romney was just clearly obviously he was the RNC's pick. 2 years before the election, everybody was like, oh yeah, it's gonna be Mitt. Like that's clearly the pick. And I think that DeSantis was he felt the same way. Like it's his turn. He was successful as Florida governor. He did make a lot of headlines with his fight against Disney, or also the fight against immigration and stuff, when he bust a bunch of immigrants up to Martha's Vineyard or whatever, right? And that was a big show, grandstand thing. So he had a lot of popularity from stuff like that. And I think he was pretty popular with conservatives. And so, he just figured cool, it's my turn.
Yeah.
And everybody I think everybody thought Trump was going to crash and burn.
Yeah.
They just figured, look, these investigations are going to take him down. They're going to find something.
They were banking on it.
Yeah. Basically, we're all just going to wait in the wings for him to crash. And then, whoop, we will be there. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. Which is such a sad way to just hey, when your boyfriend cheats, I'll be there, baby.
Right.
Don't worry.
That's right.
The voters have him friend zoned, but he's waiting.
I think that DeSantis did think he was the heir apparent. And I think that the RNC made it very clear early on that he was their pick. He was the heir apparent.
Yeah.
In their eyes as well. But I think that everybody keeps saying he has no charisma on stage. I hate Adam Sosnick with every fiber of my being. But he says it all the time. He doesn't have any riz, he doesn't have any, he has no personality on stage.
No.
None at all. In interviews, he's terrible. And I think that part of that is because, and he comes across to me, and I've always said this, I've heard Candace Owens say this, he comes across as disingenuous. He comes across as phony. And I think that's because he's trying really hard to look like this badass motherfucker who is gonna bust down the walls and he's taking over government by force, and he's none of those things.
No.
He's like a CPA, but I don't think that's innately a bad thing. I don't think that's something that I think it's something people could vote for.
Yeah.
I think he just has to be genuine. He has to be who he is.
You got to sell that.
Yes, exactly. You have to sell that correctly. And I think that his team missed out on a whole lot of marketing opportunities, going to the podcasts, getting the eyeballs really. And the eyeballs are on the internet. It's not on public television. You know what I mean? Yeah. Cable television.
Well, you mentioned Adam Sosnick, who's on Patrick Bet David podcast, which you love, and he did
Except for him, I hate him.
Right. Oh, I can't stand him. And the audience hates him too. Like if you go read the comments, everybody hates this guy. I don't understand what he's doing there. Sometimes I think it's just hate clicks. Like people just want to watch. Maybe they keep him on just because people hate him. I don't understand the economics of it, but it's got to work.
He contributes almost nothing.
PBD's doing well, so he's got to be doing something right. But you said that PBD tried to have him on, and he never could get on, right?
He eventually did. He eventually did come on the PBD podcast, and it did not go well. So he came off real bad. It was very poor performance for him.
I think you're right though. That I've been seeing this on YouTube and stuff. People are kind of talking about how the mainstream media just doesn't have the same influence that they used to, and DeSantis is kind of old. he's sort of old guard with that. In that, like, he thinks Fox News is going to carry him. He thinks that going on interviews on CNN, Fox News.
In his defense, that's where a large portion of voters are at, is on Fox News. You know,
I mean, I think
he's from Florida.
You
got to think, what is the Florida demographic?
I mean,
it's largely older people.
Like we said, though, that's Florida, but his campaign did not translate nationwide. True. And you've brought up that, like, meeting the voters, like, in these smaller settings, that's where it's going to be at going forward. Like, the corporate media is just starting to lose influence. Joe Rogan has more influence than Megyn Kelly or Tucker Carlson ever did. Going on Tim Pool, going on PBD, going on these various podcasts, that's where it's at. And it's much more personable. Like, you have the chance to look like a real person instead of a 2-3 minute interview where you just got to say as many buzzwords as you possibly can. And Vivek was on the podcast.
Vivek would talk to anybody. You got to give him credit. RFK too.
RFK was on. Yeah, he would go talk to anybody.
Anybody. Some of the small channels I saw those people on, I was just astounded. They would talk to anybody.
Mm-hmm. And I think that maybe this year it didn't. Obviously, RFK is not doing as well. He's obviously not going to be challenging Joe Biden, and Vivek did drop out. But I think that you're seeing that new media gain import big time, where people are, the trust in corporate media is at its lowest ever, and people are tuning into podcasts more and more. You know, I mean, years ago, podcasts were like this niche thing. Everybody's like, oh, okay, podcasting, right. Yeah. But now you've got Joe Rogan just signed like a $250 million contract with Spotify. I mean, these things are massive. These people are making tons of money, and people are listening to these opinions, and these candidates better realize that if they don't engage socially like that, if they don't take a hint from Trump, like, I think a lot of his victory was attributed to social media. He understood how to use social media in a way that none of the other Republicans knew how to use it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that what these guys also have to consider is that the old generation is aging out. You know what I mean? They're voters for the next 10, 15 years, and then you've got to deal with millennials and Gen Xers. Yeah. And we're consuming media in a very different way than our predecessor generations. And I think that,
Gen Z, I think, is voting. I mean, I don't know what the years are, but I think older Gen Z is voting age at this point.
Absolutely.
They're in their early to mid 20s now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that they've got to understand that there's a shift happening here. And those of us who are, they've always complained about us millennials, but we're all pushing 40 at this point. And so, we're in our mid to late 30s, and I mean, we're who they should be marketing to now, because we're the voters of the future.
We're the next boomers. Well, no, Gen X is in front of us there, but oh my God, getting old.
Yeah.
So definitely. Speaking of media, there is drama at the Oscars because the Barbie movie was nominated for Best Film, which I completely disagree with. I think that movie is garbage, but people are upset that Greta Gerwig was not nominated for Best Director and Margot Robbie was not nominated for Best Actress. And they're really even more upset because Ryan Gosling was nominated for Best Supporting Actor. So they feel that the movie's central premise has been proven because the patriarchy is favoring Ken, but not Barbie. Now, of course, America Ferrera was also nominated for Best Supporting Actress. So, like, that, I'm not seeing that in headlines very much. That doesn't seem to pop up very much because it doesn't fit the narrative very well. What are your... so you saw it with me. We went and saw it with our oldest daughter. How do you feel about being... First of all, how do you feel about it being on the list of 10 best films of the year?
I didn't enjoy it, first of all. I didn't enjoy it. But that's a singular opinion, It wasn't, I didn't think it was that good. And what surprises me is I wonder if they saw their own movie, because essentially it was about Ken.
Right.
Like, that really, they talked so much about the patriarchy and this and that, but I don't think they understand that in doing that, they put focus on his character and his character's arc.
Yeah.
And Barbie definitely had an arc in that movie, but I think that Ken's was stronger, and just the way it was written, it wasn't even a performance-based thing. I think that their movie was more about Ken and his experience than Barbie and hers.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I mean,
I'm shocked that they're shocked.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's what I was just about to say. Like, I'm so surprised. Like, how did you watch that movie and think, yes, Margot Robbie was the star of this? She wasn't. I mean, like, she was literally stereotypical Barbie. So, like, part of the way the movie was written is that she was kind of a blank slate that anybody could put themselves on. She was stereotypical Barbie. So she didn't really have much character to begin. Like you said, she had sort of an arc. I don't even know that I would call it a full character arc. She kind of had this, like, I want to go on self-discovery journey, but it was never firmly established why. There was really never a good reason other than, like, the influence from America Ferrara on her. So, like, she had this external pressure that made her want to go on a journey, but she didn't really have any kind of internal
I don't know.
problem.
I think that she had a sort of she became discontented with this perfect plastic life that she was living. And I think that her whole arc was wanting to find vulnerability, wanting to find, comfort and flaws. And, I don't know. I think that that was her arc, is that she wanted to stop being so stereotypical and be an individual, have real life human experiences.
See, I don't think they established that very well, because at first the inciting incident is that she's thinking about death or whatever, but that's like from the person who's playing with her. So it really isn't even her journey. Like, she is a surrogate for America Ferrara's journey with her daughter and her life and her discontent and whatever. So, like, to me, America Ferrara getting nominated makes sense because her character actually had somewhat of an arc. She was unhappy and then she reconnected with her daughter. I thought it was pretty flimsy, but it did happen. And Ken, he really is the star of the show. He's the only one that I think can be called a character. He already has self-doubts at the beginning. He already has an internal struggle. He goes on an actual journey of self-discovery. Most of the movie really is about him. I think he's the only one that's written as a character. And I've also talked about this in videos, and people tell me what they think Barbie is about. And I think none of them are actually wrong, because Barbie wanted to be about 8 different things. Greta wanted to tell us 8 different things, and she started to tell us 8 different stories and 8 different messages in that movie. So everybody, in a sense, the whole movie is kind of stereotypical Barbie, because you can call it a feminist film. You could call it a fun family film. You could say that it was about the patriarchy. You could say it wasn't about the patriarchy. You could say it was about equality, gender equality. You could say it was about so many things, because it tried to start all those threads and didn't tie up any of them.
Yeah.
And so for that, I'm like, yeah, of course Greta didn't get nominated for Best Director, because it was a sloppily performed, written movie. Like, it just was not a cohesive package. It wasn't saying anything very profound, and it didn't do it in a profound way.
The only cohesive, clear storyline was Ken's.
Yeah. And so, I think it makes perfect sense that Gosling got the nomination for that. And even that, I could see somebody arguing that like, the only reason he looks so good is because he's the only well-written character in the entire thing. Like, I do think Gosling did a good performance, but I also think pretty much anybody could have pulled that off, and they would have looked incredible next to all of these plastic, phony people. I mean, that's the inherent problem with writing that movie, is everybody is kind of phony and plastic because it's about dolls. Well, then the one person that's not, great. Everybody's like, oh my God, I love Ken so much. Well, yeah, of course you do. Yeah. He actually has a story to resonate with.
Flawed, yeah. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely true.
So, I think it's hilarious that it's such a snub. And I think part of that is that it just made a bunch of money. And I think that's another issue that, like, it cleaned up at People's Choice Awards, which makes perfect sense. Everybody had a good time. It made tons of money. But the Oscars are about films, right? It's very highbrow. And so something like American Fiction, something like Anatomy of a Fall, what's the other one? The Holdovers, Oppenheimer. These were very serious movies, very filmy type movies. And Barbie just wasn't. And, I mean, it made over $1 billion. So did the Mario movie. But you know what? It's not a snub that the Mario movie wasn't nominated for Best Film or Best Director or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So, I think that calling it a controversy it's insane. It's just the internet being the internet. They just like to be angry about things. And it doesn't have to make sense. They just like to be angry about it.
Yeah. So. I think people wanted it to be better than it was. Mm-hmm. I think people went wanting it to be amazing. And I think a lot of people did enjoy it, but those aren't people who are nominating movies for awards. You know what I mean?
I liked the first 20 minutes of it. I thought they had...
that was the very beginning was with the dolls, and you can't be I don't know. I feel like they came out of the gate attacking mothers.
See, but I can see how it looks that way, but I thought they went so overboard in the beginning that it looked like they were doing like a satire thing. To me, it looked like Barbie Land and the beginning. I mean, they're comparing themselves to Space Odyssey, like it's, on people's list of greatest films ever. And they're like, yeah, this Barbie movie is just like Space Odyssey. Like, it's clearly self-referential, humor. And then they're like, the Barbies can do anything, or at least that's what they think in Barbie Land. So the first 20 minutes to me felt like the beginnings of a really great satire movie about how silly culture surrounding Barbie is, or they were gonna do like some kind of cultural talking point, right? And use it as this satire thing. And then once they left Barbie Land, it's like they forgot that they were doing that, and they wanted to make a different movie at that point. So I can see how people were upset at the beginning, because they were basically like, look, mothers are like cavemen. But to me, if they had continued the campy tone, they could have pulled off like, we don't really think that, we're yucking it up to make like a different point kind of thing. Yeah,
maybe I just went in with my hackles up, but when I saw that, I wouldn't go as far as to say I was offended. I mean, it's a movie. It doesn't offend me, but right from the jump, I was like, oh, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. Okay, I see how this goes. Yeah. And like I said, I wasn't offended by it, but at the same time, I do think that it is a pervasive message in Hollywood that to be a wife and a mother is an unacceptable path. You're somehow doing harm to other women by choosing that life for yourself. And it was just another vote for that opinion in my book, and I don't know, it just put me off right at the beginning. So
I get that. I mean, I guess that message kind of there was obviously like the pregnant Barbie, they were like, she's weird, shuffle her off. But I guess even in the remainder of it, America Ferrera's character wants to have like this career, and it's destroying her relationship with her daughter. So the message sort of is like, you can't do both, right? She wants to have this career, and the daughter she's losing that. And she's also she basically has no husband. I mean, he's there. He showed up.
He's the stereotypical white guy husband.
Oh my goodness. I wanted to be so mad at the Duolingo. If it wasn't accurate, I would have been angry.
I felt attacked in the beginning. That's where they came for you. That one.
And when they talk about watching Pride and Prejudice so many times.
Oh my gosh, right? I was like, oh my gosh, am I depressed?
If they had brought up Gilmore Girls, it would have just been speaking directly at you.
It's too much.
We have an outro of some kind, right?
What's our outro going to be?
I don't know. We need to come up with an outro.